Okay. So hi everyone. Good evening. So sure. Okay. So hi everyone. So today we will be talking about velocity. So already we have covered velocity topic in our previous discussion. So in that we have already covered what is velocity, how to calculate velocity, how to manage velocity for new teams. All those things have been covered in the last session. So today it's a continuation of that. How this velocity is getting used in different other places. So when I say different other places, we have already saw one place where it is being used. We'll slightly touch upon that and then continue with our session for the day. Okay. So coming to velocity, we all know that's an average value that is calculated with the help of the completed work from the previous sprint or sprints. So it cannot be taken from one sprint because it is always an average value. We have clearly saw in our previous discussion that why it is taken as an average value. So I will not repeat that because it's already been covered, and we have saw how to calculate that velocity and what is the use of the velocity trend and why it is an average value and how to calculate it for new teams. So these are all things that we have seen. Even this particular product backlog health topic also we have already touched upon, but just to give a quick recap of how it is being used. Generally, in a product backlog refinement meeting, what happens? We will get the clarification of the work items. We will try to understand what are the uh, um, acceptance criteria that is available in the work item and what are the use cases that we need to cover from all the angles of development, testing, everything we will be covering. And at the end, we will be estimating the stories or the work items. So now what is happening here is when I say estimation, where at the part of the backlog refinement, the input is actually the stories without any story points. And at the end of the activity, we will be getting some story points for the stories. So now these story points are actually available in the refined work items, and we will be keeping it in the product backlog. This will help us to understand what is the health of the product backlog. Why health is very important. Like say, for example, why we will be doing refinement meeting. We are doing refinement meeting to ensure that the upcoming sprints are clear for us. We know where we are traveling. We know what are the things that we are going to face in our upcoming sprints. We want to make it clear and we want to estimate it so that as a team, we are aware that this is the activity that we will be performing and there are no doubts. If we don't have a product backlog with that manner, what will happen? It is all going to be like an adopting. Okay, this I don't know what is the question, what are the things that I need to cover here, I have dependencies on this, I have a risk item in this, we cannot take it, we don't know what is the complete set of clarification on this. All these questions will be coming. So to ensure that we don't have any kind of issues during our sprint planning, we are ensuring that our product backlog is getting matured in a way with the help of the refinement. So now we want to have some certain health in the backlog. The reason is, if it is not there, let's take a very common scenario. In the month of December, many people would have taken leave, part of vacation. Your refinement meeting may not happen as per the plan. But when you come back to the office in the month of January, your sprints will be starting. What you will be planning for your sprint? If you are always having like, okay, this week I'll refine, next week I'll take it in the sprint execution, if that is the flow, you always have a risk. By chance that you are unable to have a refinement meeting, you may not have defined set of work items for your upcoming sprint. So you should be really, really careful in managing your health of the product backlog. When I say health of the product backlog, we should maintain certain level. What is the disadvantage if you have too many stories refined in your backlog and available for your next 3-4 months? What is the issue? The issue is why we have picked a budget, because we are working on changing requirements. We are working on things that are keep on having some kind of uncertainty, or things may get changed over a period of time based on the market study, based on the things happening in the trending world. So all those things will affect also your requirements. So if you refine for your next 6 months, that means you are ensuring, okay, these are the things I'm going to work. But if suddenly some changes are coming, again, you need to refine that, and it may sometimes happen as a duplicate effort, or sometimes your previous work may get into waste mode. So you need to ensure what is the level you need to maintain. It is purely depends on your product. Why purely depends on your product? Because as a person, as a Scrum Master, you know that how much changes that you are getting overall product life cycle. In the product life cycle or in the project life cycle, generally, what are the changes that you can see? Is it always like every sprint you have changes, or it is not like that? So accordingly, you need to set the product backlog health. But what is the disadvantage if you don't have any refined items? If there is a time that you cannot spend for the refinement, not only December month, it happens only once in a year, right? But there are many other situations, like your half of the team had taken some planned leave during a particular week. How you will plan your refinement? You cannot have the refinement. But next week, next sprint will be starting. How you will manage your work? So always you should have some reserve in your product backlog. That's why we say this is a backlog health. Okay. So now, why all these things we are discussing in the velocity meeting? The reason is velocity has a very, very, very tightly closed, tightly coupled relation with this product backlog health. Because with this help of velocity, we will define how to manage our product backlog health. What is our target? To get that value, we will be using this. So in a team, you would have calculated average velocity. So average velocity is not coming from a single sprint. It generally comes from a set of sprints. When I say set of sprints, it again depends on your project. Why again depends on your project? It can be 3, it can be 5, it can be 8. How many number of sprints you are taking, it completely depends on your project. For an example, your team is new. You are working on all that planning activities, preparation activities, infrastructure setup, and all those things. Is it really worth it to consider those sprints as part of your average velocity calculation? May not, right? Because that is not the actual deliverable. It is part of your preparation. When you will be starting the average velocity calculation, it purely depends on you, because first 2 to 3 sprints you may not have. That's what we have discussed in how to manage average velocity for new teams. So when you will be picking up large number of sprints, which means 8 or 5 or 10 for average velocity calculation, when always there is a zigzag values coming up, there is a fluctuation that you are seeing, because there are a lot of changes happening in your team, because your team is new, you are still settling up. There is a ramp up period for the team members. There are few team members joining your team, and it is a very, very initial phase of your team. So it is really worth that if you take a good number of sprints to calculate your average velocity. When that number can go to 3 or 3 or 4, then you have very good mature team. When I say very good mature team, it is all about, you know, that it is mostly a very, very, very common value that you get as velocity, because your team has settled up already. You know the ways of working, and you have already the process set in the place. So all these things are defined. So there is no much difference that you will be able to see from sprint to sprint in the velocity value. So in this case, you can take only very, very few sprints for your average velocity calculation. So whatever may be the condition according to your team, you have calculated average velocity. So you have first the average velocity at your side, and the second one is the topic whatever I have mentioned. In the refinement, you have refined certain stories, and you have story points obtained for your user stories, and it is available in the product backlog, right? So in the product backlog, you will pull a story, you will refine it, you will estimate it, and keep it as part of your product backlog. Now first calculate the sum of all the story points that are available in the product backlog. Okay, so now we have different conditions. That's what we have seen. So first thing, you have calculated the average velocity. And the second thing is, what is the expected story points, what we are in need. And third one is the available story points. When we say available story points, the story points that are available in the product backlog, which are refined by the stories. How to calculate the health? Health is nothing but available story points divided by expected story points into 100, which is a percentage. That's why into 100. How to set that value? As I said, right? Product backlog too much also it's not good, because you are maybe doing some work which may go for a task tomorrow, which may not benefit you. Good practice is always twice the average velocity, so that if two sprints, if two to 4 weeks, if you are unable to refine also, you are in a position which is safe for your team, which means without refinement also you can run your show. It is not necessary that always because of holidays or because of the unavailability of team members this will happen. Sometimes you are going towards the closure of your release, you are very much close to your release, and you want to dedicatively put your team, and you don't want to take your team for the refinement meeting and spend the time for the refinement sessions. So what you need to do in that kind of situations also, if you have a strengthy backlog, if your product backlog is really good, you can confidently say, guys, we don't need to have any kind of refinement meeting, we can go ahead and do the work what we are doing, let's catch up in the upcoming weeks, because still we will be able to manage. So this is why the product backlog health is very important. So now there are different conditions with examples so that you can easily correlate. So the average velocity of the team is here 20. So what is the expectation of user story points that we are looking in the product backlog? That is 40. And the story points that are available right now is only 18. So 18 divided by 40 into 100 is just 45%. So in this case, we can understand that it is very much less than the expected value. So it is just 45%. What is the action that we need to do if we see that the product backlog health is not good? That means you need to plan more refinement meetings. So always think one thing, like it's not like how many refinement meetings you are doing in a week, only 1 hour. No, that's not the answer. You should have some logic why we are doing refinement sessions, and how many sessions we need to do, and how many hours we need to spend. Completely depend on velocity. How many hours, I will talk in the next advantage section. So this is the first one. So when you see that the value of your story points that are available in the product backlog is very less, and your backlog health is just 45%, in this condition, then it's the time that you need to have more refinement sessions so that it will increase your product backlog health. Okay, this is example number 1. Example number 2, it is here the average velocity is 20 and the expected is also 40, that is the twice of average velocity, and story points that are available in the product backlog is 20. That means you have just reached 50%. So just 50% means you can run the show for only 1 sprint. We always look for the good practices, 2 sprints. That's why we are taking twice of average velocity as the expected value. So here we still have a problem. We need to still increase the product backlog health by managing few more refinement session, but not like the previous case. In the previous case, we are not even able to run the upcoming sprint itself because we were very much less with the story points. But here at least we are able to get into one more sprint. So we are in a situation to manage that. So this is the way we will be able to understand that how many refinement sessions we need to plan. Now third example is, this is a good example where we have reached 100%. Okay, so in this case we are in a good shape. So we can see that the average velocity, the twice of the average velocity, that is expected value, and the story points that are available in the product backlog is almost the same. So it is 100%. So in this case, you can still manage with your team that, okay, fine, we can run the show for 2 of the sprints without any refinement session. So we are in a really good state. So here you need to set a kind of like expectation with the product backlog health. When I say expectation, as I mentioned, do not do too many refinement meetings. The reason is, as I said, you should not keep so many refined stories in your product backlog, because the reason is, if there are things that are getting up into a change mode, then whatever the effort that you have spent in your previous refinement meeting will go for a waste. So please think that, is this fine, or I need to look for one more sprint and make that. If you feel that, okay, I have already reached 100%, then give a break for the team for a refinement session. Don't do it every week. Just cancel it for a week and see, okay, now we have reduced from 100 to now just 70. Now let's plan on more. So this is the way you need to understand the product backlog health's importance, and accordingly you need to plan your refinement session. So this is one topic. So generally the sprint closure metrics, or when you say that the Scrum level metrics what we use, I personally recommend please add the backlog health, because you are indicating to your stakeholders and the management team that we are staying in this position. Ensure that what is the expected value that we are looking for. So we cannot plan 100% capacity for the sprint execution. We need to increase our refinement hours so that we will be able to manage. So this will give you a kind of space for expressing that you need more refinement. If generally I'm going and asking, no, I cannot plan my team's effort for the complete sprint execution, I need my team to attend the refinement session more, then there is a chance that how it will happen or why it is required, all those questions. Now you have a proof, like you know that backlog health is not good for your team and this is not really a good scenario. So you need to improve that. When I say you need to improve that, you need to have more refinement meetings. When you need to have more refinement meetings, you need to plan that as part of your sprint planning. When you need to plan for your sprint planning, you should ensure that it is communicated to the people who are expecting what is going to come from the next sprint. Right? So this is the way we need to convey, and this matrix is really going to help you. At every sprint end, you are going to tell where we stand with the product backlog health. Okay. Now, we talked about how many story points we need to target, but there is something called as backlog refinement hours. Generally, people say like, okay, in a week, we will spend 1 hour. So if there is a sprint length of 2 weeks, then we will be planning 2 hours in a sprint to manage our backlog refinement meeting. So is that is there a logic behind that? We generally say 1 hour or 2 hours, just because we thought like, okay, every week 1 hour should be planned. No, you should know how to calculate and what is the actual hours required for the refinement meeting, how to calculate that. This also requires average velocity. Okay. So now this is the same. The first line is going to be the same. The expected story points that are required in your product backlog, that is twice of your average velocity. Here also I'm taking the same number so that you can actually catch the flow very easily. So it is 40. Okay, so 40 story points is the expectation. Now let's say in general, refinement meeting happened in my team. Okay, so I have taken some previous refinement sessions that happened with my team members. Every 1 hour, I have captured every time it happened for 1 hour. And in that 1 hour, what is the outcome that we gained? 1 hour, see, if you look at this chart, this table is not giving a standard story points, right? Some days it was like more than 20, some days it was just 12. So why there is a fluctuation? Because what topic we are discussing also matter, right? Because refinement is all about clarifying the details, what we need to clarify, and understanding what are the things that are required to estimate the story, and and capture if there are any dependencies or risk, and identify the action owners for that, so that it will be a complete refinement. So now in this case, few stories are like cakewalk for the team. They have easily estimated and they came up with the story points. For some stories, it's very hard. They have spent so many hours, means they have spent so much time to understand what is the story all about. So that is the reason, even though it is 1 hour, the outcome is not the same. So your team has, it's a mix, right? Your team's maturity level is also important, because if you are a team that is working on the same kind of product and the team is also stable and you are working like 3-4 years, then you know the complete details of your product, so it will be easy for you to estimate. When in conditions where your product is new, your team is also new, it takes some time for us to understand and estimate it, right? So it also depends on the team and it also depends on the product. So overall, every team you need to first understand in 1 hour what is how we are calculating the average velocity. Similarly, you need to understand what is the outcome of every refinement meeting. So now what we are doing, I have taken for last 5 refinement meetings, like how we generally calculate the average velocity. Similarly, here I have taken 5 instances. So out of the 5 instances in the refinement meeting, the time spent is 5 years, because every day I have spent only one hour, so 5 years. What is the total story points refined from these 5 refinement meetings? 102 story points. So the outcome is 102. Now from this, calculate for 1 hour. So what is the for 5 years, it's 102 means it's for 1 hour, it is 20.5. Let's round it off to 20. Now the expected story points is what? 40, because our average velocity is 20. So now we need to reach 40 story points. Okay, so 40 story points is our target. So hours required to achieve that expected value 40 is 40 divided by 20. That is 2 hours. Okay, so this is the calculation. So now I can understand, if I am putting 2 hours, whether I can do it in this week itself or next week itself, it doesn't matter that I need to spread it across like one hour. If I want to continue as one in the same week itself for 2 hours, still I will be able to manage, because if my team is spending 2 hours, they will be able to get around 40 story points. Around, it's not accurate value. All these things are average values, which are close to the exact values, but it may not be the actual accurate values. Now, in this way, you will be having the information how many hours you need to plan in the refinement. Okay, what is the benefit of this? There is a benefit. When you are planning your sprint, always when you send the sprint planning report, you will be sending, these are the committed story points from my team. Always give a hint how many hours that you are going to spend for your product backlog refinement. The reason is that will give confidence to your team and your stakeholders that you are having a logic behind everything that what you perform, because it's not like 1 hour. Okay, even though it is required or not, okay, we will do refinement. If it is not required, you don't plan that week. And if you feel that it is required, only you are thinking the second week there are many planned leaves in your team, plan 2 hours in this week itself, because anyway, you know, on an average, if you spend 2 hours, you will be reaching around 100% product backlog health, because twice of average velocity you are expecting, right? That is expected story points is 40. That you will reach in 1 week itself. Next week, even though team is not available completely, it is not going to harm your product backlog health. So this is the way you need to plan your backlog refinement hours. So for this also, we are using average velocity. So this is the second advantage. The first advantage is calculating the product backlog health. And second advantage is understanding the hours required for your product backlog refinement meeting. Now, the third one is velocity versus capacity. So there is always a confusion, like this also we have covered kind of like in the first session. Let's try to understand the difference between this and why there is a separation required. So whenever you are planning a sprint planning, whenever you are doing a sprint planning meeting, ensure that you give more weightage to the capacity than velocity. Velocity is just a guidance, and it is not the thumb rule to plan your things. Why, when I say why there is a capacity, for example, generally, like last time also I used the same example. Now also I'm just trying to connect with the same example. I can have 3 chocolates in a day. That's the average velocity for me. But in a day, in a particular we are not crossing too many things from the velocity. The reason is that is one option for us to understand, are we fitting in the boundary or we are too much deviating from the boundary or not. It is like we may be thinking that okay, we have some capacity and let's do this, let's do that, and we will be over committing. But at the same time, if you are taking velocity as your complete guideline and telling your team, hey, this is what our velocity is 20, please do not pick up any items more than 20 story points. If we are reaching 20 story points, that's it, put a period. No, that is also not a good scenario. Then you will not improvise anything in your execution, right? You should take capacity as your consideration into a more value than your velocity, but not something like your velocity is taken as a complete solution to plan your sprint backlog. So you need to know, or you should be having a kind of balance how to use your velocity and capacity. So give more consideration to your capacity. That is when you will be able to motivate your team to take better sprint backlog items, not sticking to this value. But at the same time, when your team is crossing too much of limit, then you should say, you should put a barricade and say like, guys, I think we are overcommitting on the things. Let's take a step back and look out the things what we have already planned and think about, because our velocity is so and so. That's the way you need to manage it. Please do not go by velocity completely when you are planning the things. Velocity is just for predicting, not for execution. Okay, that is one thing. I'll be covering what is the difference between predictability and productivity as well. So there also we'll be covering, but this is just a hint that you need to remember, especially on velocity and capacity. So these are the things that what we have covered today. First is the velocity that is being used as part of the sprint planning in the product backlog health, in the backlog refinement. In backlog refinement, 2 sessions we have seen. One on the how to manage the hours for backlog refinement, and second is to check how many hours we need to plan and how to balance your backlog refinement sessions in a way that you are not doing too much refinement, so that your product backlog has reached a tremendous value and you may be losing your already refined items, because if there is a change in the requirement, that also we have seen. So those are the things that we have covered. Overall prediction of product roadmap is one topic that we are going to cover now. Now, before this, I'll just request people also can answer to this question. Can we compare the average velocity of two teams? You can unmute and answer also. I repeat the question. Can we compare? There is a team called A and team called B. Okay. Can you compare the average velocity of two teams?
Usually no, because each team may have their own understanding of what each story point means. So maybe it would be difficult to compare across teams.
Okay. Anyone else wants to add anything? Okay. So yeah, whatever Arun said is right. I just want to add few more information with an example so that you understand why we are not considering average velocity as a measure to calculate the productivity of the team. Now let's take team A, recently started team, new set of people, product is new, they are ramping up, their average velocity is 20. And there is another team, which is like they are working in that product for long years, and the team is also like kind of settled team, very stable team. Their average velocity is 30. Now can I say, okay, 30 is higher than 20, so of course team B is performing well? No. As I mentioned, I already given the background information, right? This team is still ramping up. Team A is still ramping up. They have a lot of hiccups. They don't know actually the product roadmap. They are trying to clarify each and everything and then estimating and then proceeding. So they have lot of blockers and they are trying to unblock at each and every checkpoint and then they are moving. So they are actually having lot of dependencies and then they are clearing it up. So they are taking good amount of time. So their average velocity is 20. It is all about a different show for them. When it comes to team B, they know each and everything of the product because they are working in the product for like 2 to 3 years, and the team is well balanced, very stable team, and they know what is the vision of this product and the roadmap of the product clearly, and the product backlog is also very healthy with all clarified information. So their execution is comparatively smoother than team A. How can I compare these two teams? So this is the way you need to explain about productivity also. So here The average velocity is a value that is very, very specific to a team. Very specific to a team, and it's a metric that should be only used internally, and it is nowhere related to productivity. It is just a metric for predictability. See, let's take, I walk with a speed of like 3 miles in an hour. Okay, in an hour I can cover 3 miles. I am today walking on a track which is very comfortable for me, and I'm using the track for so many years. I'm shifting my home and I'm going to a different place. I am walking at a different park and I'm seeing here, there, everything, because it's a new place for me. So I'm watching around and I'm walking. I'm unable to cover the 3 miles. So the same person, same walking style, I'm walking for last 2 to 3 years. When the things are getting changed, it depends on the environment also. The value that I'm giving, that is 3 miles or 2 miles, is changing. Same way, it is this average velocity is also specific to a team. Even though the same team, it is not going to be compared with the other team with a different set of people. Now let's take one more situation. Just I'm walking with 3 miles. I'm covering 3 miles in the hour. Okay, every day I'm walking. Can you say next Monday on so and so date, Selvi will cover for an hour these many miles? No, may increase, may reduce, but you can predict. Okay, Selvi may reach 3. That number you can tell somewhere. If you want to tell to someone, my friend Selvi can reach around, at least around the 3 miles. But you cannot say I will stick only to 3 miles, right? Because that day maybe I'm not so good with my health. I may not be able to walk comfortably, or I'm maybe in the other end. I'm like super excited. I'm very energetic on that day, and I would have covered 4 miles also. So what is the average velocity and what is the productivity? There is no link at all. It is two different things. This will give you a prediction. Okay, Selvi as a person, she can cover 3 miles. That you can predict. She may cover more, she may cover less. That is on that particular situation, on that particular sprint. What is the nature of your backlog? Whether you have the team completely available, any unplanned leaves, any sick leaves, any kind of hiccups during the execution, all those things will change your complete execution at the end of the sprint. You may deliver more story points also, or you may deliver less story points also. But if it is completely fluctuating, then how as a team of product management I can see a vision of this product? Like when this product is going to be targeted as a release date, how can I even target that? There should be somewhere a measure, right? For that prediction, we use this average velocity. So Selvi can walk in an hour, she can cover 3 miles. That is her average. So let's take that as a measure. And if she wants to cover like 100 miles, how many hours she will take? Same way, if this is the average velocity of our team, we have such a healthy backlog of these many story points available in our product backlog. For covering this, which is dedicated and planned for version 1.0, how many sprints we need? That we can tell, right? Because 100 story points, for let's take an example of 100 story points available in your product backlog. That means how many sprints you need to cover that. Your average velocity is 20. That means you need on an average of 5 sprints. Your team would have achieved in a different way, and they would have completed the work in even 3 sprints also. Or they can go more than 5 and they would have completed that in 7 sprints also. But at least for a higher vision, for a plan to set the target date, you are at least having this average velocity to come up with a figure like, okay, on an average, 5 sprints are required to cover this refined stories which are available with so and so story points. So for that, your average velocity is helpful and not for the productivity. And average velocity cannot be compared for the two teams. That is the main goal you need to set. When you say that there is a productivity from team A and team B can be compared, then average velocity also can be taken in that nature, right? Where average velocity cannot be compared, the reason is it's very specific to a team. How you walk, how many kilometers that you can cover, how many miles you can cover in an hour is completely dependent on you and the environment. Similar way, your average velocity is also completely specific to the team. Do not compare. And it is also not a measure to calculate any time the productivity. It is just a measure to predict the things. Okay. Okay. I think we are on time. Let's open for questions. So let me go to the chat window. Okay, I think no other questions. Any questions from anyone? You can unmute and ask if anything from last session or current session.
Hey Selvi, hi, this is Sonal.
Yeah, Sonal.
Actually, I have a question. It may not be directly related to the topic of velocity, but it's kind of about estimation. So you just mentioned the way of, in the last point that you said, that if you have an average velocity for the team and, after a while when your team is kind of into the project smoothly and your product backlog is well refined to a certain amount that you can deliver for up to at least double of your velocity that you have, right? That can give you a that's when you can predict how many sprints, and that also it's a prediction that how many sprints will you take to complete this refined backlog. But that we can do only when we are, we have some amount of data ready. But how about this situation? Sometimes it has been asked upfront before even we start our sprints, right? That we have some amount of backlog and I know that in Scrum, or even in Agile, there is no such way that we can commit that it will take like 6 months or 5 months. But anyway, it has been asked like on a high level, how many sprints would you take? But that time we don't have any data regarding velocity. So how do we go about that?
See, this I think we have discussed in a new team also. So this will happen when your team is new or you have not yet settled with the team. And usually your project timeline will be prepared at this phase, not in the phase when you have a mature team, because things will be very smooth at that point when you have things are well settled, right? At the very beginning, you will be generally making the timeline. So in that particular time, you need to take the achieved story points as your reference. Okay. What is achieved story points in that particular sprint? How much your team is achieving at the end of the sprint? Like how many story points your team is achieving. That will help you to plan your things. But here, I am again putting an underline and saying, this is not an average value. This is a value from a specific instance. So the risk is more. So whenever you make a timeline, always you need to think about what are the assumptions you are making, what are the risks that you have identified, what are the dependencies that you have identified. Even if it is a settled team or if it is a new team, you will be adding this. So when you are adding here, you need to specifically say in the assumption, average velocity is not yet calculated. Still the team has only completed 2 or 3 iterations so far, and we have not yet reached that level of calculating the average velocity. So we have taken instead the achieved story points from sprint number so and so. That's it. This is your assumption. In risk, you need to add, as average velocity is not used in the calculation of timeline, there is a high risk that things may change variably. For that reason, we have added a buffer. And the mitigation plan is, you need to mention for that particular risk, you need to mention the mitigation plan as the additional buffer of so and so sprints have been added to manage this risk. But still, you need to point this as a risk, because risk is something it may or may not happen, right? So you need to tell that, because your team is new. And see, this situation generally happens and we will be in a situation to provide some timeline because the team is new. No, I will wait till I will calculate the average velocity. You cannot answer, but you need to put it in such a way, okay, this is the data I have, but this data is not the one actually will help us to completely plan our timeline. So I am adding this as a risk factor, but still this is the plan that we have with this risk. That's how you need to present it.
But Selvi, I have another question here. Probably I didn't understand. At the beginning, right? Suppose we are just 2-3 iterations through. We don't even have enough backlog story pointed, right? I mean, backlog is also not refined. So
Yes.
We don't know what is our goal to achieve. That is also one problem, right?
Yeah, but somewhere you need to start, right? You cannot say that I don't know what will be my team's outcome at all, right? So somewhere you need to start. So see, even though the nature of the story is different, like why we always say that average velocity should be taken after a certain period is because your team needs some settling time. Your team may not be able to deliver the things in the way that they will be delivering when they have the complete information. So there are a lot of dependencies which you have not identified because you are not so clear about the requirement. All those things will be happening, and your product backlog also is still getting refined. But at the same time, you need to somewhere start also, right? You cannot wait for that things to be settled down, because things may be settling down only after 4th or 5th sprint, but that will take another month time. But for product management team to plan and commit to the stakeholders, this is the one that we can deliver by so and so time, they need some kind of understanding. That's what we will be doing. This is our average velocity, right? Same way what we will be, this is our achieved story points, right? Similarly, what we will be doing, a high level guesstimate we will make. What is this high level guesstimate means? That will be prepared with the help of weeks. Every t-shirt size we will give some weeks. For example, small means it's 2 weeks, M means medium means it's 4 weeks. Like that we will prepare, and we will ask the team, with the current knowledge what you have, tell us this epic will take how much time. You will not even go to the story level, because if you have not even started anything in the execution, you will only have epics. You don't have even stories, right?
Got it. Yeah.
What is your question is on that? Like only we are doing preparation and planning. We don't even have a single story related to the product. Then you cannot even get into that level. So you need to ask the team, give a very, very rough estimate. You don't have time to sit and write all the stories and ask your team, because that itself will take a month time, right? You need to write the stories, you need to refine it, you ask the team, and they will say, no, we have dependencies, all those things. So somewhere you need to give, in this epic, our target is to cover so and so. Or from epic, if you have already reached the feature level, it is well and good. It is much more easy. But whatever it may be, it will not definitely come to the story level. You will be somewhere in the high level. That high level, you need to give an estimate. So here, you need to be really, again, careful. You need to mention everywhere. It is not the estimate that is taken from a story level. It is at the high level estimate. You need to always use the word high level estimate, because that will give an impression to people. There can be lot of changes that can come in future.
Right. Got it. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions on velocity? Okay. If no other questions, I think we are good. Thanks everyone for joining, and this is one of the interesting topic that we have covered. I think hopefully it would have helped many of you. Start using that as a practice in your sprint execution, and when you're doing the refinement sessions, it might be helpful to manage your hours and what is the outcome of the refinement sessions, that will, and taking care of the product backlog health also. So I think hopefully these things will be helping. Yeah, thanks everyone. Good day and happy weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Selvi.
Thank you, Selvi. Bye.
Bye bye.